Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Big Tent USA. My name is Melissa Kane, and I'm the vice chair of Big Tent. And I am very thankful to be able to welcome our friend Lauren Groh-Wargo back to the tent today, along with Representative Justin Pearson from Tennessee's 86th District, for an urgent discussion on how we can protect voting rights throughout the South and indeed throughout the nation, and make sure all Americans are being fairly represented in the wake of Louisiana v. Calais. Big Tent is steadfast in our commitment to defending our democratic values, our Constitution, and the rule of law. Our goal is to empower our community with facts and calls to action so we can all become stronger, more effective advocates for our country. We always have impactful calls to action on our website, and we'll add a link to them in the chat. But before we get started, I wanted to highlight one thing that is super timely and relevant to our discussion this evening. Civil and voting rights groups are organizing a day of action this Saturday, May 16th. The organization All Roads Lead to the South is organizing in Selma and Montgomery, Alabama, large protests. And I'm going to ask you, if you are anywhere near Alabama, to try and get there, to show up and join in the protest. And if you're not, you can search the map for satellite events. There are more and more popping up every day all around the country. And if you can't go in person, please use your social media, use your contacts and your conversations to generate mass attention on this protest. We need all eyes on Montgomery, Alabama this weekend. The link we're putting in the chat has the information you'll need in order to do this. And also, we have a lot of amazing programming coming up that I want to tell you about, but Representative Pearson, who I don't even know if he's here yet, only has until about 7:30 with us. So I want to ask you to stay tuned after our conversation with Lauren, and I will let you know all about who is coming to the Big Tent next. Lauren Groh-Wargo, who was here with us in February for the first in our series of Spotlight speaker events focused on safeguarding the 2026 election, is a political and civic engagement strategist, executive, and advocate for economic and voting rights. She partnered with Stacey Abrams in 2012 to build democratic and progressive infrastructure in Georgia. And in response to 2018 voter suppression, she founded and serves as the CEO of Fair Fight Action, which combats suppression and advances voter education. Hello, Lauren. It is really good to see you. I don't think
Hi.
we have Representative Pearson with us yet, so I want to start with you and say, oh, here he is, Representative Pearson. I'm glad you're here. Let me introduce you too, and
Hi.
because I know you don't have as much time. Representative Justin Pearson, welcome. Representative Pearson is a movement leader and Tennessee lawmaker. He rose to national prominence as a part of the Tennessee Three, standing up for gun reform and being overwhelmingly reelected after being expelled from the legislature. A lifelong organizer, he helped lead the victorious Byhalia pipeline fight, shut down a cancer-causing sterilization plant, and is now challenging Elon Musk's XAI data center. He's the second youngest state legislator, a national voice for justice, and was honored with the Truman Center's 2024 Moral Courage Award. He launched his campaign for Tennessee's 9th congressional district on October 8th, 2025, declaring it a campaign for the people. He is running to bring that fight for justice to Congress. Lauren and Representative Pearson, thank you so much for coming to Big Tent. So much has happened in the past 2 weeks that has shifted the playing field, and we are squarely in a horrifying time for voting and civil rights. And I'm not going to say this is an unprecedented time, because I think things looked like this before the Voting Rights Act, really. And my headline question to both of you tonight is going to be, with this backdrop, what can we be doing in southern states and around the country to ensure fair representation and a free and fair 2026 election? But I want to start with Representative Pearson, who is heroically in the thick of it in Tennessee, where the only Democratic majority Black district in the state has been dismantled and disenfranchised by the GOP-controlled legislature. So Representative Pearson, first, welcome and thank you for being with us. And I guess I want to start by asking if you're okay. I can't imagine the level of pain and fury you must feel to have to continually confront white supremacists, and that is what they are, who have stripped your district of its representation and are trying to strip you of your elected power in that legislature.
Yeah. Well, first, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. It's good to be with the Big Tent and to be with Lauren, who's been on the forefront of fighting for voting rights for many years. And I'm truly humbled to be sharing space together with so many supporters, like-minded friends at such a time as this, when it is hard. These decisions that have come from the Supreme Court, the Callais decision was devastating. The actions of the white supremacists across the South in our country are eviscerating Black representation and voting power. And so while I do feel hurt and some devastation, I am also feeling defiant and undeterred toward our vision for justice and equality and fairness that has never actually been realized in this country. The Voting Rights Act was an attempt to make that more of a reality. And since the day it was passed to this day, people have been trying to gut it, to destroy it, to take it back, to make second and third and fourth class citizens of Black people. And it is our responsibility, as Mrs. Coretta Scott King would say, to win freedom and justice in every generation. And this is our time. This is the moment that we are in. And it's hard on me, my wife, my family, our community, to see what was done in the Tennessee House of Representatives and the Senate signed by the governor at the behest of the nation's largest white supremacist, the President of the United States. But we can't be deterred from our mission and our goal, which is why we're still running for Congress to represent the Ninth District, because our voice matters, the perspective we bring matters, the hope of our campaign and the hope that we hold for the South is important, and we can't yield that.
The photo of you standing up to a white guard who I believe was borrowing you from
Mhm.
the state house where you work is seared in the minds of those who have seen it, many of us. Can you give us a view of what it is actually like to be on the ground there now in Tennessee? What are the real life implications of being stripped of your committees and your subcommittees?
Mhm.
What does that actually mean? And how do you move forward as a legislator?
Yeah, really good questions. I mean, th in that moment, I was trying to attend a Senate hearing about the racist redistricting that would take away and crack our district into thirds, and was denied that after having just been in that committee hearing room, and letting the organizers know not to knock on the walls or beat on the walls, because the chairperson said that we would not be allowed to participate otherwise. And they would close the committee hearing completely and take a vote without any input from people like Leader Abrams, and others who had shown up there to speak. And so after doing that, I walked back into the room to take a seat, and that's when that sergeant at arms prevented me from going. It's a spirit, right, that we are also fighting against, about abusing power, about silencing the voices that don't sound the same, that don't look the same, than you would want for them to. Then this again is not new. This is a deep part of America's history, and I call it's the Neo-Confederacy. And so that's what it is right now in the South. You have communities that believe in justice, Black people, white people, Latino folks, folks of lots of different identities who are deciding, I'm going to be in this fight, I'm going to be in this struggle. And Black women, of course, as always, are helping us to lead that fight and struggle here in the South. And it is up against those who want to take us back, neo-Confederates. And I say that because this form of the Confederacy is not trying to remove itself from the United States of America. It is trying to remain a part of the country while destroying the democratic institutions and pillars that have upheld the country. And they are doing that by taking the hatred that would lynch people and dissipating it into all of the institutions. And I tell folks they no longer have to stand at the bottom of lynching trees when they wear badges, they wear black robes, they wear suits and ties in state legislatures and city halls and county governments that ultimately take away or seek to take away our voice and our power. And so this is a project of authoritarianism. This is a project of white supremacy called Project 2025, which many of us have heard about, but it's been going
Absolutely.
on
They
even
they put
before
it
that.
right out there for us.
Yeah,
Not
but
enough.
right there, it's clear. It's clear what their aims are and what their goals are, and we need to take them for who they are and not pretend that this is not reality, because this is, and it is not the time to sit on the couch or sit on the sidelines. It's time to be in the game.
Yeah. I was going to go in a different direction, but when you brought that up, I have a great question that came from one of our attendees for both you and for Lauren. In the face of what's going on in Tennessee and what you're talking about white supremacism that is out in the open. A question was, how do we reclaim state sovereignty from federal government involvement in elections? And I guess I wonder, is that question the right question to be asking? Because even within state sovereignty, you're finding, you know, white supremacy let loose that is very much trying to suppress the vote. So, how would you address that? I'd love your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I mean, it used to be an argument of conservatives, and I know Lauren has a lot to offer here, so I'm really curious to hear what you have to say. But it used to be an argument right, of the South, that you need more states' rights, you need state sovereignty, and it
Yeah.
comes out of, right, the 10th Amendment, which says, powers not delegated to the Congress are reserved to the states, and the idea that states should be, as one former Supreme Court justice said, the laboratory of democracy. But Tennessee has become a laboratory of autocracy. This is where they're testing out the laws, the policies, challenging them in court to see what sticks, and then they ship it out to the rest of the country. We passed over a dozen laws that were written by Stephen Miller, the Deputy Chief of Staff at the White House, against immigrants, right? Whether it be attacking their driver's license, e-verify, all these things to target the immigrant community, because that's what the White House wanted us to do. That there is no state sovereignty in the way that others would think about it, that there's some check that we put on the federal government. Now, everybody's capitulating. You got Ku Klux Cameron, you got the lieutenant governor, you got the governor, all doing whatever it is that the White House wants to do. But the White House can't do everything. And so they're using the tools of state government, which are quite powerful, to move forward their agenda, particularly the things they can't do nationally. They're trying to use the states and using states to push those really horrible policies through.
Right. Right. Lauren, when you were here with us in February, we were already seeing election interference and a push to narrow voting rights from MAGA aligned forces and Donald Trump. This is the GOP. I mean, we talked about so many things back then, right? Nationalizing, for the push to nationalize elections, and DOJ's pressure campaign, and the SAVE Act, and what was going on in Fulton County in Georgia, and the push to end mail-in ballots. And obviously, since then, as we were anticipating, this decision came down in Louisiana v. Calais. And I guess what I'm shocked by is the speed with which, one by one, as Justin's saying, southern states, and really the GOP, the mainstream GOP in these states, are falling in line to bring back Jim Crow. We have what happened in Tennessee. We have the Virginia Supreme Court overturning the redistricting referendum that was the will of the electorate. We have the Mississippi governor who tried to call for a special legislative session in the old Confederate State House, right? I think that was to redraw Supreme Court districts.
That's right.
And in Georgia, even the quote unquote moderate Governor Kemp making it clear that he's going to try and redraw districts before 2028. And it's only been a little more than, what is it, 2 weeks since Louisiana v. Calais. So, Lauren, are there enough people, white people, Republicans, are there enough good people to push back against what's happening? How do we push back? It's a storm.
Yeah. Yeah, we raised the alarm bells by releasing a report when the Supreme Court had its rehearing in October, looking at what the impact of gutting Section 2 would do, and co-released that with Black Voters Matter, and then followed up with our analysis on the state legislative impact. Because to answer your question, we also have to look at the deep impact Section 2 has had in creating a multiracial democracy, a chance for that in the South that's never been fully realized. But Section 2 protected communities of interest, communities of color in the South, in county commission races, school boards, public service commissions, state Supreme Court. This is not just about Congress. And you're going to get to see in Georgia when Confederate Governor Kemp, he is Jim Crow in the country club and always has been. Voter suppression has always been a big focus of his. It's always been focused on Black voters. They are going to initiate here, the first state we will go first in June, to also racially gerrymander the state legislature, which will be a gutting of nearly 30 Black and Latino members. They will try to carve out of our legislature, and 2 Black congressional members out of our delegation. So this is part of the Bannon far right and Federalist Society plan. They view this as one of their 3 vectors to how they get dominant one party rule and white supremacy. Their first vector is mid-decade partisan gerrymandering, which they started here and are having mixed success, but having success. Number 2, the gutting of Section 2. And number 3, they plan to change how the census will be counted and remove non-citizens from the counting. The Bannon world count on that's 42 seats in the House. You combine that's one party lockdown, white supremacy in the House. You combine that with our currently fundamentally broken U.S. Senate, where Wyoming has 2 senators just like California, which the 5th largest economy, I believe, in the world, the anti-democratic Senate, no DC statehood, et cetera. we have to get very clear that before Section 2 was gutted, our democracy was broken. The court has been captured. This is a longitudinal project of the Federalist Society and far right. This is not new and MAGA. It's just been fully mainstreamed and centralized. If Section 2 would have remained in the book, we still would have been in that. But now we're having a racist gutting, a attempt at recreating a Confederacy in the ways that Rep. Pearson outlined in the South, where 60% of Black Americans live. So this is a large project. The courts will not save us, right? And clearly they're causing active harm. They're putting out press releases like they're a rapid response Republican political committee at this point. I do not call them Supreme Court decisions. I call them Roberts Court press releases. What they did this week on Alabama was a freaking press release on cutting loose okay to redo the primary. Your question is, can we stop it? The answer is yes. We have a playbook in our own history, and we know now, combining all of that and the learning we have on the ground, what people have to hear clearly is we have the talent in the South. We need the belief and resources and the deep understanding that, yes, currently this is happening in the South. This is not a Southern problem. This is an American problem. The
Right.
American experiment has always been about who is a full citizen. Right now, we have a set of concentration camps with brown people in them. I say concentration camp, I mean that literally. Concentration camp means a concentration of similar people.
Mm.
That's what concentration camp means. And on the plain reading of the definition of a concentration camp, not that people are being gassed. I'm not saying that. I'm saying concentration camp, and that we're concentrating immigrants together in inhumane conditions while we are watching the Republican Party prioritize the racial gutting of Black America in the South. The symbolism of Rep. Pearson's Memphis being where they went first
Mm.
was gutting. I was up there at the beginning of some old friends who've been working in Tennessee. So this is a group project now. This is what
Mm.
I call it's time for Black voters and Black voters' allies to understand that our collective fates are caught up in the racial justice and liberty of Black Americans. If Black Americans do not have full political representation and economic autonomy and opportunity for self-realization, we will not thrive. And why I say it this way, Melissa, is the other side, and I don't mean Republicans, I mean sort of the Federalist Society MAGA folks. They know something that I think the resistance, the bipartisan, the massive resistance coalition, does not fully understand, which is the far right understand that the fastest, most expedient way to complete their political project of white supremacy and autocratic dominance and an oligarchy is the evisceration of Black political power and autonomy. That connects to DOGE, gutting the federal government. That connects to going after affirmative action and DEI. It goes to the way they have forced academia to capitulate and the weaponization of this fake anti-Semitism. It's all connected to therefore then the political project. They know that. I don't think the resistance knows that. And I use the
A really good
resistance in
point.
a very
It needs to
broad
be.
point,
Yeah.
way
Yeah.
beyond the Democratic Party. I'm
Yeah.
talking about the broad coalition
Yeah.
of people who think we need to have a thriving two-party system, understand we don't agree all the time, and think we have to have a multiracial democracy. That would be my challenge to the big tent
Does a
community.
two-party system jive with that? I mean, can you have a two-party system with that? Because it
Oh,
seems,
100%.
shouldn't it be
We're going
more?
to
Yeah.
have to rebuild. We are in a group project and a long-term project.
I
So
want to.
we'll get, I don't want to go there just yet,
No,
but
no, and I want to give Representative Pearson a little time because I know he doesn't have the full hour with us.
yes, he's in an
Um,
active campaign.
I know, and so I want to ask a question about that. But before I do, people are asking, and I'd love to know, like, is there litigation happening to fight the what's the destruction of this district
Absolutely.
specifically?
So
What is that? And also, a lot of people want to understand, as we were talked about earlier, the meaning of Democrats, every black lawmaker and every Democrat being stripped of their committees and what that actually means.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me tell you what happened with the committees. Committees are the way that bills become the law. It is the way that we have any check on the executives. And right now, even though we're out of session, there are committees that are being and happening every single month. So whether it be the Government Operations Committee, Finance Committee, there are committees that Democrats sit on to offer our perspective, ideas, things that may represent our constituents' viewpoint that would be very different than the majority white male caucus of the white caucus, white Republican caucus in the Tennessee House of Representatives. So by us not being able to sit on there, you can't ask questions to those departments. You can't get access to the information and to the resources outside of what is publicly available. And you're not able to represent your constituency if you sit on those committees. Right now, I sit on transportation and private acts. It's unlikely those committees are going to open, but for people who are on finance committee, for people who are on GovOps committee, these are going to be consequential as we look ahead. And so we can't send questions to our colleagues if there's legislation or there are ideas from departments that we might have concerns about. And that is another attempt by Cameron Sexton, who operates more like an authoritarian, to control power, to control narrative, to
Yeah.
silence voices of dissent
Yeah.
against him and against the Republican Party. So ultimately,
I
that's
mean,
why
he's
it's
not
so
the first one to
consequential.
do it,
He is
but yeah.
not. Then this is the thing, y'all. They all have playbooks. They're copying from each other, but it all is rooted in a history of our country, a very long history of our country, of silencing the voices of dissent, quieting and silencing the voices of Black people, refusing to seat us in Congress or in state houses, right? This is all a part of the same tactics that seek to enshrine white supremacy within our country's culture, within our political structure, so that Black folks, people of color, women, immigrants don't get to have a say in the way that government is run, right? Like that's what they desire.
Yeah. And within people wanting to understand, like, so what do we do to fight back against
Yeah,
this?
absolutely.
What's being planned?
Mhm.
Where's the litigation? Where do you need us? I guess those are
Yeah.
all questions hanging out there.
That's so helpful. And I'm so sorry I got to leave at the half hour mark
No,
because
it's
I
okay. I'm
actually got
going
a
to make it
graduation
really hard
speech
for
to
you to
go give.
leave.
I got to go encourage this next generation to stay in the fight
That's fair.
and celebrate their commencement. But here's the thing. So we have three lawsuits that are going forward. One is has been filed by the NAACP, the other by the ACLU, and then myself as a plaintiff, along with Chaz Mulder and a few other folks, is before a judge. We tried to do a restraining order on these maps going into effect, and that today, unfortunately, was denied by, of course, a Trump appointed judge. Because one of the pieces of the first administration, right, one of their goals was to take over as much of the judiciary as possible. And so we're feeling the implications of that this many years later since that project started under the first Trump administration. But we still have that case going forward because we think and we know these maps are racist. The intention was wrong. And then the way that they did this was lack complete transparency. There was no opportunity for public input or engagement. And it was done immediately in the wake of the Callais decision to attack, to crack the only Black majority district in our state.
So with that district cracked,
Mhm.
how do you win uh, your election this fall?
Yeah. I mean, to your point, like the truth is this has gotten a lot harder, right?
Yeah.
Like we weren't smooth sailing in to win the primary, but we were feeling pretty confident about where we were in the primary against the Democratic incumbent and going into the general election. As one ancestor said, if the mountain was smooth, you couldn't climb it. And so we know we have a harder mountain to climb, but it is not an impossible one. And we've got the best team in the world to help us to make sure we knock the right doors, reach the right people, and keep the right message. That's one of the things that makes me feel really good. Our message doesn't change because they added 14 more counties. People are still suffering because they don't have enough food to eat and they don't have enough money to buy it. People still need access to healthcare and universal access to healthcare. Veterans still need protected. Billionaires are still harming and polluting our communities with data centers for their own profits and their own gains. And the regular average person is struggling under this authoritarian regime that we are living under. And this message resonates with people, and they
Right.
know that the status quo isn't working for them, and I'm a candidate that's going to change it.
And so what can people outside of the South, what can we be doing to be
Can I just
helping?
also underline
Yes,
one of
so
the
of
things
course.
on Rep Pearson? They did an aggressive gerrymander. However, there is room to move here insofar
Mhm.
as the dynamics of this year in particular and the history in the new districts. When you look at the 2018 election results in those districts, You see that in 2018, the top of the ticket in a lot of these districts actually performed in the high 40s. So in
Mhm.
a wave year, folks need to triple down for great candidates like Rep. Pearson because this could be a year with the kind of backlash we are seeing that hard things become doable. So just to underline, this is not a lost cause, and I'm punning intentionally on that one.
Yeah, I
Mm.
love that. And
So
so
last
it is, we require folks we need donations. We were fortunate, thanks to many of you. We're in the top five donors, fundraisers in the last, on the Democratic side of the ticket last week. So we need those donations. We need the support to help us fund this campaign. We're going up against a guy who donated $1 million to himself in the Republican primary,
we
right?
will
And he's a MAGA guy.
we'll help
Yep.
get the word out. Listen, I want to thank you so much for being here with us tonight and for continuing a fight, for picking up the mantle of a fight that was fought for, blood and won long before you were born and shouldn't have to be fought again. And I'm guessing you believe, as I do, that lawmakers should be able to be focused on making people's lives better rather than constantly having to try to level the playing field. So thank you on behalf of Big Tent for everything you're doing, for standing up to the guard in the front of that door, and know that we're here for the fight with you, and you make the call and we'll respond. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I'm so excited to be in this fight with y'all. And Lauren, let's keep giving them hell. Bye, y'all.
Bye. Thank you again. Wow. Lauren, so I think about what's happening in Tennessee and how it is literally going to be repeated in state after state.
Yeah.
And we have what's amazing, I guess. I didn't have a chance to ask Representative Pearson about what gives him hope, but what gives me hope is you and others like you, and other people who are representative who are fighting this fight. But talk to me, let's go back to what you were talking about what the far right knows that we need to let people know
Yeah.
in order to fight back.
Look, we know that the lessons of fighting historic autocracy and contemporary autocracy in places like Europe is that we can't just be against, right? That's inadequate. Like Rep. Pearson saying, we need to be fighting for people and have a vision for the future on the things they care about, right? We also know from history and from contemporary autocracy battles like Orban and others that we have to build a very big tent. So, pun
And
intended,
no,
and
but absolutely, it has to
and a
be a
really
very
deep
wide.
tent. So, part of our theory of change on how we get out of this is doing both. Part of the challenge that I see on building the big tent right now is that a lot of newer folks to the resistance who are coming as disaffected Republicans or are coming from corporate America, maybe are a little bit more moderate. I think we all agree that this is an egregious overreach. We agree that the Supreme Court's out of hand, et cetera. But what I think we have to think about, especially as a lot of white people on this call, not that everybody's white, but I know there are a lot of white people on this call, is that we've got to build the tent big, but we have to be able to talk about race and get comfortable with that. And and that I think I see that tension in the voting rights space all the time. People want to talk about the democracy fights and skip over the fact that my county of Fulton County wasn't just chosen. It's the largest Black majority number of Black voters in the South, ninth largest in the country. That's why the FBI showed up here and not a
Right.
white suburban Democratic county somewhere. That's why they're in Maricopa County. Race infuses the strategy of the autocrats. So we have to understand that. And as we build the big tent, we have to get increasingly comfortable talking about these issues to understand that you have to be on the anti-racist Black liberation bandwagon, even if you don't use terms like that. We
Mhm.
cannot make the democracy fight race neutral in a country as diverse as the United States, period. And so I
Right.
think that's going to be one. I already see this, Melissa, and it's in part because I live in Fulton County at the apex of this in so many ways. And why was Trump so obsessed with losing Georgia to begin with? He didn't need us for 270.
Right.
It's because we were symbolic. We
Right.
were
And you're saying it's never really just about having a Republican majority. It's about making sure that the racial
correct.
minority is held down.
Correct. It's holding back dissent. It's why you see all of these attacks work together. So I think this is our challenge and opportunity on the resistance. Because I have laid out a six-part theory of change. This is not rocket science. It's informed by people like Hannah Arendt, who studied
Mhm.
totalitarianism, Ruth Ben-Ghiat, our modern leader, folks like Carol Anderson on our board, and learning the lessons. And we know that we got to go deeper on our coalition, right? We got to work with non-voters.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
in order to go deeper, that's a really good question. And Ruth Ben-Ghiat actually talked about it here in the Big Ten. We need to find a way, we need to find something to coalesce on so that
correct,
we can go bigger and deeper.
correct.
Can that be race? Can that be?
Well, look, I think generally we have to recognize that our group project of American democracy to get to a functional two-party system that delivers for people, that like addresses things like climate change and believes in science, all of those things. It has actually a debate of ideas, not, like where we would like it to be, functional parties, and therefore have an effective multiracial representation and system. I Most Americans support that basic vision, right? They want their needs met, and they don't want to be living in a society. Most Americans don't want to be living in a society where racial minorities are oppressed, right? Like nobody wants us to become some sort of apartheid state.
That
Um,
that I'm sorry to interrupt, but that brings me back to that original question, which was, are there people who are Trump voters who um, are looking at what's happening and waking up now and saying, wait a minute, this isn't what we bargained for. This is not what we
I
signed
think
up
this is
for.
a big inflection point, Melissa, and we don't know the answer to that yet.
Yeah,
I think we're gonna get some indication of that at the ballot box in November.
yeah,
I think I can tell you that there's an intentional strategy as part of our theory of change to have the strongest possible turnout.
yeah,
And that is very much about going deep. For example, if every African American and aligned white voter were to register and vote in Mississippi, we would elect Scott Colomb to the Senate and we would beat Cindy Hyde-Smith. So the backlash from this unbelievable racism is making very plain what the project is. At the same time, I can tell you groups like Leadership Now and corporate nonprofit organizing entities that are nonpartisan who do democracy work are tripling down on how do we engage corporate leaders and others who have pulled so far back since 2020. And
right.
we're in the thick of
And
that
they can
again.
make a difference because they hold purse strings.
They hold purse strings, they hold power, they can get people
Yeah.
on the phone. We got the World Cup here this summer, and in the middle of the World Cup in Atlanta, it will be Juneteenth, and do you know where we will all be? We will be in our state capitol while they got black political power from Georgia. And you know what team is going to be playing in Atlanta the weekend they are doing this? South Africa, Melissa.
Mm,
The reality for the Atlanta business community and everybody is unavoidable. One of the things we know from groups like Onyx Impact that does work with Black online communities is that the VRA story, once it happened, and then Bill Lee and Tennessee moved, everybody started moving, and Rep. Pearson, the resistance was showing, was a breakout story in Black online communities in the biggest way, and it sustained it and it was reaching news avoidant audiences. So whether or not the folks here are seeing it in their feed or if they're seeing it in the New York Times, it is a the it is a I don't know that it's a movement yet because I don't want to but there is something happening and we fundamentally have to build a new voting and civil rights movement. And here's the deal. If you're in a blue state right now, here's what's coming to you. You're going to be in this movement too. So I believe he's the Attorney General of Missouri, former senator, Republican, in the days after the Calais decision, put out a press release and got into a Twitter, I believe, conversation with Harmeet Dillon at DOJ. She's one of the unbelievably anti-American, racist
yeah.
autocrats within DOJ right now, really leading the charge. And the bottom line on what their conversation was via press release and Twitter is DOJ is committing to starting to go after Black majority districts and Black and Brown represented congressional districts in blue states, saying that race has been a factor, even if they were partisan gerrymanders. So this conversation on
Yeah,
race
I
and
know the South.
representation will not just stay in the South.
Yeah,
It's coming to California. It's
yeah,
coming to New York. They're going to
yeah.
go after Asian American lawmakers and more. This is the white supremacy. This is why it's going to start calling the questions on Americans. We think back to the Selma Bridge March and how that moved hearts and minds in America. We all have to collectively orchestrate this because we're going to need to build to real structural
Well,
democracy
I mean,
change.
I read, I see, people are saying it's a civil rights movement. It's the new civil
Correct.
rights movement. It has to be, and it has to be
Yep,
as fulsome as the last one was, which, as to your point, involves everyone. Can
that's
you
right.
expand a little on the theory of change,
Yes. So the way that we're thinking about it at Fair Fight, I'm going to go through quickly what the six are.
please?
And then it's not that we own all of this. We're trying to help in different pieces. But number one is fight back hard now. The sort of work that Pearson did and that we were supporting behind the scenes, the sort of fight you're going to see in Georgia
And
that
I'm just going to interrupt and say to all of the people on like this is what we can be doing.
correct. But in the fight back now, you are amplifying it on social media, helping it break down. You're going to rallies on Saturday. You are calling your friends who live in the South, fighting back now to expose it, to make it plain, to build the record. We didn't get the first Voting Rights Act without building a voluminous record of the racism and the rest. So fighting back hard now to delay, disrupt. We just had a win in Mississippi. They're delaying their racial gutting.
Yeah.
Number two, organize a big
By the way, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but that win in Mississippi, was
it's
that
a win. It's
it's
a
a win?
win. It is a win because they're not going to try. They had put it on the calendar for the state Supreme Court, but we were expecting them to go ahead and do Congress. They've removed the date, said they're doing it next year. So we live to fight another day for Benny Thompson and the state Supreme Court. It's coming. They're still going to do it.
But
But in
if people are putting enough
2026,
pressure, I think I just want to spotlight what you're saying
yes,
here.
100%. The reason that is happening, I believe, is because they got the message that if they went ahead to the old Capitol and went ahead and did it, even if it was just in the state Supreme Court, they might be guaranteeing that Cindy Hyde-Smith loses in the fall, right? We're still making that. They're still doing a massive march on May 20th. It's going to be the biggest march, I think, in Mississippi in like multiple decades. So I think they decided they don't need to do this for now. They're going to do it later. And they saw Louisiana had the Republicans up for 10 hours to 4 a.m. and the pushback against their bill this week in Louisiana. Uh, Ashley Shelton, who leads the Power Coalition that's really leading the resistance in Louisiana, said, you play stupid games, you get stupid prizes, right? The stupid game was this racist map. They packed out every room in the Capitol in Baton Rouge and had
We may
people
not
stay for
win
10
today, but
hours.
we will wear them down and they will see the
Wear them
power
down,
growing.
expose it, right? You had folks in Louisiana calling young black men boy by the end of it. There,
Mhm.
it's just coming out, right? Number two, deeper coalition building. There's a lot that needs to be done there. Number three, massively expanding the coalition. We talked about that a little bit. Number four, exposing the extremism and corruption so we can document it and build a new record for Congress and the states to get to those reforms. And also, when we get on the other side of this autocratic moment, that'll be key for litigation and accountability. So exposing it, sidelining it is very important as its own goal. Number five, mobilizing for massive turnout in the fall.
Right.
Massive turnout. We can win in Georgia. We can break the Republican trifecta, for example, here in Georgia in the fall. We can potentially send a senator from Mississippi to Washington. And then the number six one is that we do all of this in a way that we're building leadership, new ideas, a positive vision for the future, investing in this a thousand flowers blooming of leadership, and building enough power that we can get to structural democracy reform.
And this is work that needs to be done in blue states as well as red states.
Correct. This is a national project.
Okay.
Some of
And
this is
I'm
acute.
saying that because
Yes,
many of our viewers, all of us, we all want to know
correct.
what is the most important thing that we can be doing right now to help to change this? And I don't
Exactly.
believe there are easy answers. There's not a
No,
right one
no.
letter.
Right now, we need
It's
everybody in solidarity with the Southern fight to
yeah,
amplify it and make it plain and do those actions. And then one of the things that is coming to a blue state next year is going to be a bunch more. The 6 point plan is published on the Contrarian, and I believe the Big Ten folks are going to send it around. But the blue state fight is coming. So I'll give you this is a preview, Melissa. This is not right now.
okay.
When your state goes to do partisan gerrymandering or is facing fights from the DOJ. We did an analysis, we released it right after Calais about what blue states can do on gerrymandering while we're living in this sort of current sort of judicial jurisprudence situation. And we estimate that blue states could exercise really raw power and get 22 seats. while preserving Black and Latino and Asian American
Right.
representation in their states.
So we
So
need to be pushing for
linking
that.
that in to the gerrymandering argument while we build for structural democracy reform, reform the court. Eventually, we want to get to nonpartisan gerrymandering and like uniform standards and all of that. But while
You,
we're
you,
in
you
this moment,
you
that
brought
will
up the
be important
court
work.
and you reminded me of something I'd wanted to ask you about.
Yeah,
Next week, there's an election in Georgia, Supreme
sure
Court
is.
election. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and why that is important? Because I think
Yeah,
you're talking about what we're doing in the states, what we need to
yeah.
focus on.
Yeah, well, first of all, we do a lot of voter suppression in Georgia. You all have learned about our runoff system that was meant to prevent Black candidates making it through the primary in the Democratic Party. So there's that. Another feature of our voter suppression system is that our Georgia State Supreme Court elections, the general elections, they're nonpartisan races, and the general elections are held on the primary date so that there's lower turnout and lower voter information about that.
It's ingenious. It's evil genius.
It is. On top of that, the way it rolls is the governor can appoint when there's an opening. So the Republicans always just retire, let the Republican appoint, and then they get to run as an incumbent. So it's stacked. Now, good news is we all have been getting some big wins in Georgia. You all helped us win two members of our Public Service Commission last year by big margins. We have two fantastic candidates running for state Supreme Court that I think have a really good shot at winning next week. So that is a very important general election win. If we can put those two on the court, Miracle Rankin and Jen Jordan, we then have two more seats up next cycle. We could have a progressive majority on the Georgia State Supreme Court in two cycles and kind of replicate what Wisconsin and others have done. So that's sort of the big general election win. Otherwise, it's all primaries. Ossoff's, the Republicans have a bunch of primaries on that side, and we have primaries up and down on both sides of the aisle, except for the Ossoff Democratic side. And Melissa, they're all going to go into overtime for the most part. They're going to
Mm.
go into a primary runoff, which will be held June 16th. And then the day after that, on June 17th, Kemp has called everybody in to the Capitol for the special session to gerrymander Congress and the state legislature for 2028.
So it's just hit you over the head one after the
Yeah.
other.
Yeah. We are very busy, very hot summer here in Georgia.
Yeah, we've got a question about whether any states have postponed their primaries so far. I feel like I read about
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Yes. Two states. This is some norm busting scariness.
Mm.
Everybody has to just get deeply comfortable with the fact that the courts are not going to stop any of this. They're not going to stop what happened in Tennessee. They've made it very plain. The Supreme Court and the court system does not want to hear any racial claims. Now, that doesn't mean people aren't going to fight and build the record because they are. Why I say it that way is Louisiana, I think, was the first most egregious case. If you all didn't follow this, Governor Landry, who is a lapdog for Donald Trump in Louisiana, he had a gubernatorial proclamation emergency order to delay the Louisiana primary that had already started, had already 40,000 votes cast right after KLA happened. He said he used the statute in Louisiana that's meant to be about like hurricanes. It was an emergency order saying, but the emergency was that they had unquote unconstitutional districts. And so therefore they needed to delay an active election and throw out the votes that people were currently voting just
Right.
for Congress. Everything else was still valid.
Right.
They immediately were sued, and the lower court judge said, nope, you can go forward. So they've thrown those votes out. There's still court battles, but it doesn't matter. The ship has sailed. Their primary has been delayed, and they are continuing to be in special session, passing through a new congressional map. So that's number one. Number two, move over to Alabama. Their governor was not sure what she was going to do. Eventually, the pressure mounted. She called a special session. They had to get approval from the Supreme Court to proceed on a racist map because the Roberts Court 3 years ago told them their map was racist and they needed to have two black majority districts. Flash forward to this year, 3 years later, the court said, just kidding, you can go back and use your old map. Just kidding. So
Okay.
that primary is now also delayed, and they passed a new racist map last week.
So this brings me to a question that I think you might have seen that came through when someone was signing up, and I almost didn't ask it because I was like, oh no, but I think it's important. Do you think that the Supreme Court's conservative majority is malicious or naive in the push for
I
colorblindness?
think they know what they're doing. And here's why. It's my John Roberts press release argument, which
Yeah.
is they moved so fast to green light it. So fast. Friday night, like Friday end of day, this past Friday, the state of Alabama asked the court if they had permission. Everybody had, like, the parties had until like 5 o'clock on Monday to file responses. Supreme Court sends out their press release at 5 o'clock. They didn't even read it. They are moving so fast to green light this action. If they had any concern at all, if they were not looking at outcomes here, they would have done the decision at the end of June after the primary season, would have made clear that because of the Purcell doctrine, you can't change stuff this late. They caused maximum pain, and I think they absolutely knew what they were doing because they didn't do the decision early or late. They did it in the middle of primary season. And one of the things that people have to remember is the number one most effective and common contemporary way you suppress a vote is through election administration chaos. All these bills are unfunded mandates. None of them are more money for poll workers. Now there's more qualifying deadlines, there's more primary dates, more elections to be held, which means less money for poll workers, less money for locations, which means long lines, more confusion for everybody. So the flood zone is
So
really
they
trying
knew
to break election
exactly what they
administration.
were doing with regard to the decision, with regard to the timing of the
I
decision.
I
So
think
that,
so.
yeah,
Yes. I
yeah.
because you
So
the not just the time of the decision, the response. If there was any if they would have been surprised by the outcome, Melissa, they're like, "Oh no, they're all moving right now. We didn't mean to do that." They could have slow walked.
yeah.
They had to proactively act on two different matters to allow Louisiana and Alabama to proceed on their plans to upend these primaries. And they wasted no time, right? And if you read some of the decisions, the one that greenlit Louisiana moving forward, Alito is criticizing his colleagues within the decision. There's a level of acrimony, and clearly this has been a 40-year project of the court that they are clearly seeing all the way through.
Um, with that in mind, a couple of questions I'm seeing in the chat and that we got earlier. Everything's been sort of blown up. There are no uniform standards here to, in
That's
different
right.
states and rules on gerrymandering. And someone asked, do they require, do we need a constitutional amendment for universal standards on gerrymandering? How do we handle this?
So there's a
Knowing
lot of
and,
a
and,
lot of
and is
folks.
it possible to with the
Yeah,
Supreme Court that
I
we
don't.
have, and even with a Democratic majority?
Congress has to act. I
Right.
think the we have to build a threshold level of power to get Congress to act. If, for example, the Biden administration had actually seen through freedom to vote and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act in 2021, with if that had happened, we may be in a bit of a different situation. They may have reversed it because you can reverse laws in Congress. But I think it's very clear we've got to get to structural democracy reform. Another thing that's being talked about in Georgia is running a constitutional amendment process in states around that. And then there are different state laws. But I think right now, because of the court, and its prohibition on using race for anything and partisan gerrymandering being greenlit. Ultimately, the only way out of that is to change the law in Congress around redistricting standards
Right.
and then reform the court into something that's not a,
Right.
branch
But
of
to
the
you,
of
this is
Congress.
a project. This is a
Correct.
multi-year project. This is not just about
No,
2026. Yes.
this is a multi-year project, but if we do our damnedest to I think we could win the House and the Senate this fall, build enough power and a movement really in this country that we somehow can get through the finish line on the presidency and then build enough of a mobilization to demand the kind of change and reforms we're going to need. That is the way out of it. You know who actually wrote a really good piece on this is Ben Wickler. His new book coming out I got an
Yes.
advance copy. He goes through this actually exactly. Great, great read. You'll be able to buy it soon.
Um, we've gotten a lot of questions about, so with this redistricting, does it make it nearly impossible for Democrats to win control of the House, uh, uh, or and win the
My
presidency
answer
in
on that is
2020?
no,
I mean,
Melissa. I
that's what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah,
But
so
that said, what do we have to do? What are the
that's right.
things we have to do to protect this election?
That's right. Well, so it's basically everything you've done in the past, but add something additional. So by that I mean if you've done turnout work, if you've adopted districts in other states, all of the postcards, all of it. So for example, the gerrymander in Florida actually makes a South Georgia congressional Republican vulnerable. Okay?
Hmm.
The Tennessee gerrymander in a normal non-wave year might be hard to overcome, but we may be able to surprise some folks there. But they're not able to do it everywhere. So we do still have, for 2026, we still do have a path in Congress. So we have to triple down on that. We also have to help win the US Senate. And then
Right.
everybody has to take an extra step. That is, become a poll worker in your local community. Get involved in the resistance around the South. Pick something additional that you can add to your plate because what got us here will not get us there.
And as we look to 2028 and the shenanigans that are going on with redrawing districts for 2028, once we
Yeah,
get there, if, is it
that's right.
possible to hold a house that we win?
That's
So
right.
I think that's a
Well,
question
look,
people have.
none of this is easy or guaranteed. And my dark comment is things are going to get worse before they get better. Like we have to build the resistance now, but this is not a one and done. We could win Congress and the Senate, but the autocratic project will still be on fire, right? So this is
We cannot let our defenses down. We cannot let up.
That's right. Well,
It
and the
will
other
go
thing
up.
too, Melissa, is like put your own mask on first. We are in a long fight. This is a marathon and not a sprint, right? So pick what you can triple down on and then know that the strategy is to break us, to overwhelm us, to make us dispirited. And so I know sometimes we all have these moments where it's just so overwhelming. So literally self-care is political warfare. So I think that's also part of it. And I talk to a lot of normal people in my life who are very political and aligned, but have normal jobs and don't work in it all day like I do. And people are just overwhelmed. So we got to give them concrete action like you all do. And we got to understand that this is the fight of our lifetime, y'all.
And we have to learn how to talk to each other.
Correct.
By the way, and I'm sure we will put it in the chat, we've got great talking points Big Ten provides that make it maybe a little bit easier to have these conversations. We're coming to the end of our time together, and I always like to, end with a little bit of hope and ask you what makes you hopeful. I was asking you before we came on, can you talk a little bit, or does it give you any hope what happened in South Carolina where Governor McMaster upheld the decision not to redistrict, or is that just because of cynicism and he knew there'd be a lot of pushback? Is that something to be hopeful about, or can you give us something else?
Yeah, South Carolina seems to be a moving target, so I'm not ready to, yeah, we'll see. But I think, I mean, the honest answer, Melissa, for me is working with all the local leaders I get to work with. Last night, I went to the AFL-CIO Atlanta Labor Council and, talking about how we engage workers in this fight. There's a Georgia Youth Justice Coalition that has all these young leaders, folks like Justin Pearson, some of the electeds. For me, being the extrovert I am, the people who are fighting, our county commissioners in Fulton County have led the fight against Trump in a way that is unbelievably valiant. And they're local county commissioners. They didn't expect to be nationally important. So, and they've risen to the occasion, right? So I think for me, those are the things that keep me going day to day. The thing I say, we have all the talent, the heart, the commitment down here in the South. We need the collective belief. We need the financial investment. We need the solidarity, and know that we will give it back, right? When the rest of the country is in it. So I am not down in the dumps. I think this is a crisis. This is a crisis we've known
Headline:
has been
Lauren
coming.
Groh-Wargo is not down in the dumps 2 weeks
I'm not
after
down in the dumps.
Carolina. That's good.
Yeah. Look, we knew it was coming. It's here. It's awful. But
Mm.
we're at the ending stages of their big political project here, right? Like they've
Mm.
got the courts, they've got the state legislatures, they've got the federal government. I mean, they've been building this for some time.
And we
So
have the moral
yes. And look,
fight.
every crisis is an opportunity to build the world we want to live in. And that's just the work we have to do. And I know we will continue to get wins along the way, and we are going to surprise ourselves. And that my last thing is I think this crisis is going to revive organizing in the South across
Mm.
every sector, worker organizing, faith organizing, good governance, corporate organizing. I'm already seeing those kernels. And if we do that, then we will build a deeper and broader coalition, and we will eventually make it to the other side of this, and it will be a better
Will you
world.
come back and talk to us more about that? Because I think that's really interesting.
Yes, it's the,
Okay. Because
yes, for sure.
please, I think we need to unpack that a little bit. I want to thank you as always for being here, and helping us unpack and make sense of, well, it's a huge task that we have in front of us, right? And it's a fight that all of us need to be playing a role in order to protect the future of our country. So thank you.
That's right.
Thank you for guiding us through it. And we always love having you in the big tent. And thank you to everyone who has joined us this evening. Please mark your calendars for Tuesday, May 26th at 1 p.m. Eastern for a conversation with North Carolina Democratic Party Chair Clayton Anderson, I'm sorry, Anderson Clayton, and North Carolina Supreme Court Justices Anita Earls and Allison Riggs on the strategy, organizing, and leadership needed to build a Democratic majority in North Carolina. From local elections to the state Supreme Court, this discussion is going to explore why these races, as we were just talking about, are so critical. And also, please join us on Tuesday, June 2nd at 12 p.m. Eastern for a no-nonsense conversation with MS Now legal analyst and veteran federal prosecutor Andrew Weissman on his new book, Liar's Kingdom: How to Stop Trump's Deceit and Save America. And he'll have a breakdown of SCOTUS's decision this session as well. This is a book event, and the first 50 people to sign up will receive copies of Andrew's book. So go to our website and sign up. Follow us on social media and on Substack, and please come back soon. Thank you again to Representative Justin Pearson and Lauren Groh-Wargo. Thank you for being here. Good night.